Good evening. I have 6:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is street maintenance program, 5-year look back and review. So who's heading that up? Okay, Ann and Luke.
Let's see. All right. Luke Peter with PEC here to present on the 2024 street maintenance plan. We can get that PowerPoint rolling. So if you remember, was back here in March presenting our preliminary plan. We made some revisions based on some of your guys' feedback. Also, there's been some developments. So just an update.
Can you speak up a little bit or you get to the mic? A little
Yeah,
closer?
sorry. An update on that plan for this year. But first, it's the other one. Oh, look at that. No, you're good. All right. So we'll look back on the previous plan. Back in 2022, we did a pavement evaluation of all the streets in your network. This is kind of a high-level recap of what it looked like a couple of years ago. Again, there were a couple of neighborhoods, that Lawn Terrace and Pearson's neighborhood, that had kind of fallen into disrepair that we need to kind of pump some money into to kind of bring that up to, the good to fair range where it's easier to maintain that pavement. We also want to maintain all the other ones at the same time, not forgetting, so that they don't fall into disrepair. So our original plan that we presented a couple of years ago for year one, and it's tough to see here, but we're going to do a lot of patching in those neighborhoods, the Pearsons and Lawn Terrace neighborhood, Bel Aire Village. So we've completed that patching portion of all those neighborhoods. Then there was the other project, which was the microsurfacing on Oliver. Also a couple of those neighborhoods, which we did the scrub seal, but now we have to come back and do the microsurfacing. And I'll give some update on that here in a couple slides. But staying on the 5-year plan, for year 2, we originally had planned doing some mill and overlay in Lawn Terrace and Pearson's neighborhood, as well as doing some microsurfacing on Woodlawn and the Quail Ridge neighborhood. Then year 3, again, doing more mill and overlay on the Pearsons to complete all the streets in that neighborhood, as well as the North Woodlawn and Bowers neighborhood east of Woodlawn there. Then year 4, we're coming back with doing more microsurfacing in those other neighborhoods. And then I think in this year, we are also including some of the repairs to these roundabouts out here, fixing up some of that asphalt, maybe replacing it with concrete. So that was included in year 4. And then year 5, more surface seal, microsurfacing type treatments in a bunch of the neighborhoods, again, to preserve them so they don't, fall into the more expensive treatment range. So that was the goal of the 5-year plan. Again, trying to bring everything up to that good to fair range and maintaining it with lower cost pavement treatments. So what we did back in that year 1, which was last year, again, we did a lot of patching in the Lawn Terrace neighborhoods. You can see all the locations we did asphalt repairs, curb and gutter repairs, valley gutter repairs. So you can see those on the screen there. We'll just breeze through them. Pearson's neighborhood, North Woodlawn, again, a lot of patching and curb repair. Bel Aire Village and Quail Ridge, and the Bowers neighborhood east of Woodlawn. Then again, we had the second portion of that first year, which was the scrub seal and microsurfacing of these streets shown here. They did the scrub seal, but due to scheduling and weather delays, they had to sit on it over the winter, and they're planning to come back this spring to do the microsurfacing of these locations. They were supposed to start May 20th. Due to weather delays again and scheduling conflicts, they had to delay that, and they still have not gave us a firm date on when they are going to start. I called them yesterday and today several times, and they won't get back to me on when they're going to start. We will keep hounding them and get an answer because it should be coming up soon, because we talked to them May 20th. They said a couple weeks. It's been more than a couple weeks now. So we just need to get a hold of them. Hopefully we'll get an answer, and I'll let Ann know when we get that, so that we can blast out notifications to all the residents impacted there. So after we complete that microsurfacing, that year one will be done. We'll have done all the stuff we had planned to in the first year. So moving on to year two, 2024, we had a $900,000 budget to work with. In that $900,000, we added in doing some pavement marking refresh for some of the arterials. Originally, when we presented back in March, we were doing a lot more of the arterials. We kind of scaled it back to the ones that really need a refresh. That would be Rock within city limits and 53rd and 45th, as you can see there in blue. So the cost of doing the pavement marking refresh on these arterial streets would be around $150K of our $900,000 budget. Also added was doing additional curb repairs and patching in the Pearsons and Lawn Terrace, as well as Bel Aire Heights neighborhoods. Ann and I went out and marked all those repairs. We estimate they'll be around $100,000 each for the Pearsons and the Lawn Terrace and Bel Aire Heights. So that leaves us $550,000 to kind of work with. And kind of comparing what we had originally planned on the left of your screen here, and then what is our recommendation to kind of revising this plan based on the figures that we have to work with. So in that original plan, we had planned to do microsurfacing on Woodlawn north of 45th, and also to the neighborhood of Quail Ridge down south there. Initially, with Vance Brothers, who's doing the microsurfacing, who's coming back this spring, they had agreed to do that additional work with last year's bid prices. Again, due to their scheduling conflicts and weather delays, they no longer agreed to do it for last year's bid prices. So we do have the option to rebid out a microsurfacing project, but our fear would be we would potentially not get great bid prices. We're not entirely sure Vance Brothers wants to come back out and do scrub seal and microsurfacing, at least this year. So the fear would be that we would get higher bid prices, because I think there's only one other contractor who can do the microsurfacing. So our plan and recommendation would be to wait on the microsurfacing, at least of Woodlawn and of Quail Ridge, and do more of the mill and overlay that we had planned for this year. So in our 10-year plan, we had identified doing mill and overlay in the Pearsons neighborhood, just the collector streets, which are the higher volume kind of neighborhood streets, and then Lawn Terrace as well. We think we can do most of that mill and overlay in the Pearsons neighborhood, and then just try to do as much of the mill and overlay in the Lawn Terrace as we have budget for. So that is the game plan. It also has benefits that we only need 2 bid packages, because we can lump the curb repairs and asphalt repairs we're already doing in those neighborhoods with the mill and overlay. So we would have 2 bid packages, one for the pavement marking of the arterials, and then another one for doing what is our revised plan, which would be the curb and patching repair in those neighborhoods, and doing as much mill and overlay as we had planned. So
Just a question on that, back on the bid pricing. Am I understanding, so there have been delays due to weather and due to their scheduling, and because of their delays, the price has now gone up?
They are just unwilling to keep last year's bid prices. They were trying to rush to come out at a time that was convenient for them, for their schedule, but we still needed to get approval for this plan from city council. So timing wise, it didn't work out. So we had to push it out. And then they weren't willing to schedule wise do the work.
The
additional work. Yes.
But they will still honor the work that's already contracted at the contracted prices.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the locations that we would propose doing the mill and overlay would be the Pearsons, just those ones highlighted in red. Again, those are the higher volume streets within that neighborhood. So it'd have the greatest impact. Those are the streets you get, you drive the most if you're a homeowner in that neighborhood to get in and out of. your home. And then with however much additional funds we have left, we would try to do as much of the lawn terrace neighborhood as we can. So we believe that the Pearsons neighborhood would come to about $500,000 to mill and overlay those collector streets. And then again, we'd have around 50K to work with for the lawn terrace. That could go up or down, depending on the kind of bid prices we get on all the other work we have planned. So again, what does that look like kind of downstream, the impacts of our kind of 5-year plan if we were to do this kind of revised plan? Again, this is what we would propose this year, doing as much of that mill and overlay as we can. Then in year 3, however much we didn't get to in that lawn terrace neighborhood, we would mill and overlay there, as well as, mill and overlay in the Pearsons and North Woodlawn neighborhood as we had planned in year 3. And then year 4, we could look at adding back in the microsurfacing of Woodlawn north of 45th, because we're already doing a bunch of other microsurfacing treatments in that year. So yeah, that was a very quick rundown. I'm sure you have questions. So yeah, I'll pause for questions.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. One is, have we done any thought about year 6 and year 7? You're in year 2 right now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So have we done any thought about looking at year 6 and year 7 for long range planning?
We can. It's just hard to look that far in advance. I mean, a number of things change within this year.
That's always the case.
So I'm sure more things are going to change. So we're going to kind of have to keep moving things around. And I forget off the top of my head what we even had planned, but that's something we can look at for sure. And it'll be easier to, as we get further
I think
along.
we need to keep that cadence every year, adding it the next year out, because if we don't, we're going to lose sight of things. And I don't like that idea.
For sure.
The other is 37th Street is beginning to show some wear and tear. I don't know if it's in your plan at all. And my guess is it isn't. But I
From
don't know
Oliver
that.
to Hillside.
Yes. From Oliver to Woodlawn. Yes.
Oh, Woodlawn. Yes, right.
Yeah.
The pavement markings you're referring to?
I'm
Or just
referring
the-
to the street itself. It looks like
Okay.
it's beginning to need some attention. And
That's
it's not in
something
bad
we'll-
shape, but I don't
Yeah.
want it to get there.
I want to say we address it in maybe year 8 and beyond. But it's something we can look at for sure. I know the pavement markings, some of those were kind of on the edge of needing maybe a refresh. But the street itself,
I know
can
they're
take a
shared
look
with
at.
Wichita, so maybe there's some Wichita component there as well. But
Yeah.
I think we should certainly look at it before we end up with one of these other problems that we want to avoid.
for sure.
Right.
We'll add it to the list and take a look at it.
Okay.
The choice to do the scrub seal and microsurfacing, sounds like there's 2 vendors in the area that do that.
Mhm.
The other alternatives for the scrub seal and the microsurfacing, if I remember right, there are a few different approaches
Yeah.
you can do there. Do those other alternatives have a broader footprint of vendors that can do that type of maintenance?
I believe so. Yes.
I'm wondering if that's just something that needs to be considered if we're kind of locked into a vendor or 2 based on our choice here. That may drive costs up long term, not having that stronger competition.
As I remember, we were trying this to see how this worked.
Yeah, I think it was started as an experiment. So
but
I think this is one of the learnings as well.
Learnings.
Maybe there's only 2 places that do that, and maybe it's actually a little harder to get this done
Yeah.
than what we would like.
I guess a follow-up question to that is, other cities that you're advising and that are doing other options, are you still having the same issue with contractors because they're just so busy bidding projects?
So typically, this is the only one that we are really involved in the bidding of the maintenance.
Can you get to the microphone,
Oh,
please?
sorry.
Because this is recorded in.
Yes. Yeah, this is the only city that we're really involved in the actual bidding of the street maintenance projects. So I don't know what that looks like for other municipalities. I think a lot of it, I mean, the ones we work with they've been chip sealing for years. They know the vendors. They just keep doing the same, you know, treatments that they've always been used to. So, yeah.
Will you refresh my memory? I remember we were going to do Quail Ridge, if I remember right, and then we put it off because of Woodlawn. I assume since we're okay leaving it off, it's not. I haven't been over there in a bit. I mean, it's in good enough shape to push it off.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It will be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns with this issue? All right. Well, do we need to give them any direction? Are you going to bring a motion to the city
No,
council?
yeah. Well, once we get the bids, we'll bring them in
Once you
the
have bids,
regular
you'll
council
bring it in?
meeting. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the information. So this is the 5-year look back and review. What about street maintenance program for 2024? It sounds like that was already included. Is that correct? Okay, good. All right. Just want to make sure I wasn't jumping ahead. There's something else I need to call up for. Okay, very good. I guess the next thing is the 2025 budget workshop. So Barry, it's all yours.
Thank you. So I'm gonna try to run this from my computer up here. Make sure this all works here. Awesome. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Barry Smith. I'm the new Finance Director for the city. I've been here about 4 months, and it's been a lot of fun so far. So tonight we're going to do our first budget workshop for the 2025 budget. So we'll just start off with our first budget calendar we'll look at. These are kind of the steps of the budget process as we move through it. Tonight we'll do a brief overview of the general fund. We'll go over our valuation estimate information that we received yesterday. That's not correct. There we go. And we'll go over our council priorities. And I like to do a lot of interactive tools when it comes to the budget process and help the understanding of the public get a better grasp on the budgeting process in a whole, how everything works. At our, July 9th council workshop, we'll present the first proposed budget for all the operating funds, general water, sewer, streets, bond and interest, everything there. We'll gather some feedback, get suggestions, and then from that point forward, we'll determine our intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate, which I recommend we always pass that and go through that hearing process for the revenue neutral rate hearings and approvals and all that. And we'll kind of touch on that here in a little bit. And then from there on, we'll do a couple more workshops for any changes or discussions or reviews of anything that's come up during that process. And then we'll have our hearings on September 3rd for the revenue neutral rate and also the 25 budget for adoption. And I can send this out as a PDF afterwards. That way you all have this information. So I'll start off with a quick overview. We'll mainly touch on the major revenue sources. And for the city, generally, the property taxes are about 50% of our primary revenue source. For 24, we budgeted about 4.3 million. We've collected 4.1 to date. We still have a couple distributions left throughout the year. The minor delinquent taxes that get paid throughout the year that'll come in to really get us close to that budget number. Another major source is sales tax revenue. It is one of the volatile revenues just because it's so dependent upon consumer behavior and the economy as a whole. If everyone's spending a lot of money, we're going to get more of our distributions come to the city. So far to date, we've collected just over 800,000. According to the budget, we should have expected to collect 793,000, so we're about 2.5% over what we budgeted. So sales tax revenues are coming in strong, and that's just a sign of the economy as a whole. employee wages have been high. They've been outpacing inflation just barely over the last 12 months. So I believe that's why that's coming in a little high. If we compare the actuals to date to the same period in 23, we're actually about 5.6% over. So we'll probably end up somewhere between that 3 to 5.5% range at the end of the year overall. One thing I do want to mention is how that local option sales tax is distributed. So it is that 1% sales tax through Sedgwick County. It is a countywide. It gets distributed to all entities within the county. And it's based off a formula that's outlined in Kansas statute. It's one of those formulas that there's not a whole lot of information on, but you can really look at it and kind of dig into how that number comes to be about. So it's really based on our population compared to the county and what we levy in tax dollars compared to every other entity in the county. So you divide those out, divide them by 2, and that gives us our percentage of that total 1% Sedgwick County wide sales tax. So our percentage comes out to be 1.3388001%. And yes, that is a lot of decimals, but that's actually what it comes out to be. So what we need to keep in mind when we're looking at that is whenever we adjust the mill levy, it's going to have an effect on those distributions we receive, right? So if a drop in the mill levy, it needs to be offset by a raise in population to even that out so we don't end up losing some of our sales tax distribution amount. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward.
So a couple issues there. I know legislature is supposed to reconvene next week and review tax cuts again. And two of the issues that they've been pretty consistent about is reduction in sales tax on food, or elimination of sales tax on food, and reducing property values or exempting the first $100,000 of property values from property tax. What effect have you taken that into consideration in any of these numbers here?
Yeah, so luckily when that first sales tax legislation came out, it did include local option sales taxes, but that was later removed. So that 1% local option tax by Sedgwick County is exempt from that sales tax reduction. Yeah,
They're coming up with a new bill next week, so we don't know yet. But I know that was
some testimony for sure.
Yeah,
because I mean, if we're looking at 1.9 million, that's what almost 19 mils worth of revenue that we receive from that distribution. I know they've introduced that same legislation several times. There's a lot of counties that want to collect that whole amount and keep it. But it's extremely vital to all the little cities around here, just in our maintenance and upkeep of roads, maintaining personnel, facilities, everything like that. So it's a general use. We can use it for really anything. So it's very important, and we'll definitely be submitting some testimony if that's the case regarding that. The property tax one, we'll just have to see how that goes. There's been several different variations of that proposed recently, caps on assessed values, everything like that. One was passed previously with the tax lid, but there were some exemptions with that. They saw that didn't work, so they cut that, went to the revenue neutral rate. And it's just an ongoing cycle of what's going to come up next regarding property taxes. Yeah. So here's all that information in a pretty graph, just split out by year with a trend line down the middle. You see a steady increase over time since 2021. Just a little more information on our major revenues. Our franchise fees, it's about 12%. Those are generated from all the utilities utilizing the city's right of way for their infrastructure, any pipelines, electrical lines, cable TV lines, things like that. That franchise fee does get passed on to the end user, the residents here in town, and then sent back to the city. Those fees are based on ordinance, and those agreements are normally 20-year agreements. So every once in a while, you have an opportunity to renegotiate those. Those opportunities are rare just because they are 20 years long at a time, seems like. But whenever those come up, we'll take a good look at those when we're going to renegotiate those. Other revenues includes motor vehicle taxes, delinquent taxes, fines and fees, and building permits. Those are our larger revenues of the remaining smaller amounts. So as our city manager mentioned at the last meeting, touched on the new permits issued. Right now we've issued 61 so far, which puts us on target for an additional 146, total of about 207 permits for this year. If that does follow through, we will outpace 2022 just slightly. And next year we'll be looking at that valuation increase again and what we want to do with that. But speaking of all the building permits, when I first started here a couple months ago, I was inundated with all the developments going on, and I was kind of having a hard time keeping track of everything. So we have like 31 active developments going on right now at various stages of construction, infrastructure replacement, everything like that. So as I mentioned earlier, I like to make these interactive tools that helps me understand things. I'm a much more visual person when it comes to things like this. So I created this new residential development with Google Earth. And we can put this on the website if you would like to, but it's essentially a slideshow of every development in town that's happening right now. Any information we did have on that development, on who it is, the contact information, everything like that, I went ahead and put that in here. So anybody can just literally fly through the city and check out every development that's going on. And we go for realtors, businesses, any potential property like that. And you can zoom out and go around everywhere. Everyone has a place marker on it with the name of the development. But yeah, it's got 31 total. Just one of those interactive things I like to put out there and give people another source of information, essentially.
Well, that looks super cool and helpful for me to keep track of everything too. I don't see why we wouldn't put that on the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just saying the same thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, we can put it on there. That's not a problem at all. Just a quick overview of all the city services we provide. It's pretty standard. Public safety, public works, streets, roads, admin, planning and zoning, everything like that. So we did get our valuation estimate numbers yesterday. It was an overall 10.93% increase. So we're now up to about 112 million in total valuation. That 112 million then breaks down into real estate, what's classified as real estate, personal property, state assessed utilities. The real estate's all your houses, anything used for a residential purpose. Personal property would be watercraft, machinery, equipment, things like that. The state assessed utilities were anything like electric, gas, water, sewer, if that was a private entity providing those services. So that's kind of how that breakdown works. And then there's additional subclasses for all those. The real estate breaks down into the new construction, property changed use, personal property, and then once again, the state assessed. These are the increases for each of those sections compared to 2024. So really, when we look at the housing market and all the homes that were already here, already built, they were looking at about an average increase of 6.37% on all the homes that were already here in town. New construction made up about 3.83% of that. And that's due to, if a house is 80% built as of December 31st, on January 1, it's going to be assessed at the 80% of the value. So as soon as that housing gets finished being built, that additional 20% adds on the next year. So it's a hard deadline of January 1, half built, it's assessed at 50% of what it's going to be valued at when it's completed. So that's where that new construction comes from. So those are the classes that make up that entire increase in our valuation. Here's a quick graph of showing that over time. The bars are the total valuation, and then each point within the bar is the percent increase for that year. So in 2024, we had almost a 20% increase in assessed valuation. Budget year, so tax year 23. So we had that. That's when that mill levy was reduced down to 43. And we had that big jump in valuation. Here's just a chart of our mill levy over time. Pretty standard, responsible reductions when those valuation increases jump real high. So what does this mean for the city? If we do keep the same mill levy, our mill value goes up just about $11,107 per mill. The comparison between the increase of the previous year to now the 25 budget year, 10.93 this year. It was 19.4 last year. Total property taxes, if we levied the same 43 mills, it will increase that property tax revenue $477,000 overall. Our revenue neutral rate based on that estimate was 38.764. If we were to levy that 477,601 would just disappear. We'd stay at the same amount of tax dollars we levied for this year. So what's it mean as a homeowner? Our median home value in Bel Aire is $188,000. So here's just that comparison between this year and what would be next year. So with the 6.37% increase, the average increase go up about $59.22 for the year, and just under $5 per month if you want to break it down that way. So another one of the tools I like to make is called this property tax calculator. All this information is kind of confusing to some people who don't deal with it day in and day out. So I like to make things real easy to understand and more interactive. Check this out here. So essentially what this does, it allows you to go in here and see what's going to happen to your own house. Not everyone's house went up 6.37%. A lot had a 0% increase. Some had a 10% increase. It just varies on where your property is, what the market is around your property for other homes that are selling in that area. So basically what you would do, you come in here and if you own a house, you click residential. There's two main taxing districts within the city. So there's two separate mill rates, total mill rates. And it really splits right down the middle between Circle and USD 259. USD 259 is a bit lower, Circle's a bit higher. It's a much broader district. Their mill levies can be a little bit higher. So if you live on the left side of, I forget what street that is. Webb or
Halfway between Rock Road and Webb Road.
yeah, exactly.
Whatever that street is.
Yeah. So if you live on the Wichita 259 side, everything on here defaults to the median home value for Bel Aire, which is $188,000. You can come up here and tell my house is roughly $345,000. Everything on the screen will update automatically to show you what exactly your city portion of taxes is, what your annual property tax bill is going to be overall. On the bottom left, it breaks down to how the city uses the city portion of your tax bill to provide those services. And that's essentially what it costs that homeowner per month for administration, parks and rec, police, and street services from the city. So it makes it a lot easier to understand for somebody if they just come in here and type in their home value and say, oh, well, okay, this is going to be my property tax bill. Down here, as we move through the budget process and we want to look at maybe altering the mill levy and making some adjustments, we can do that here. If we want to look at dropping it a $0.5 mil, maybe, you can type it in or you can use a slider. It'll save that homeowner with that value of house $19.84 for the year or $1.65 a month, but it'll also have a reduction of $50,820 in city property tax generation threshold or ability. So when we're looking at that, I want to make sure we have a full understanding of how it affects the homeowner as well as how it affects the city. Just provide that full picture of any kind of changes we do make. So that's really how this works. I think it's a great tool. It's very useful and just like I said, makes it interactive. You're utilizing the tool, gives you a better understanding of how everything works. The what?
You show the total property taxes.
Yeah.
Not the school district portion, just the LA portion.
Right. This is just the city portion. Yeah. But you're on the USD 259 side, your total taxable mill levy for that property is 144.486. So that makes up the school, any cemetery districts, the city, fire district, any other taxing jurisdiction
That's per month?
your area.
Is that per month?
That's for the year.
144?
That's the total mill levy affecting.
Oh,
your
that's the mill
property.
levy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what Greg was asking, the breakdown is just that 1706, so that portion, the city portion is broken down below.
Yeah.
On the monthly basis.
This is just the
It
city.
doesn't
This is
show any
all-
other breakout.
This is all annual. Yeah. So this is just the city portion. of your total tax bill of 5,732.
It's pretty handy.
So $3,000 of that tax bill is other entities.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, everything else on there. I could put all those on there, but it gets
It
too
gets
muddled,
very
you know.
confusing.
I just
Yeah,
like to
get
focus
that.
on the city. This is us. It's what we do. And
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, that's kind of a
Exactly
cool
right.
tool. Is that available to citizens?
I like to bring it here first, get the feedback, see if we want to make any changes, anything like that. But yeah, I can get it on there in 5 minutes if you want me to. It's just a link. We can post it on there. Same thing with commercial, except all the assessment rates are different. These are all 25% assessment rate. Commercials assess that. So same thing. Come in here, put in the value of your business. You're going to see what your total tax bill is. You just adjust everything with the sliders. So that's that one.
I was just going to throw in to Greg's point, and I don't know that there's a way you can do it without getting too cluttered and more confusing with the tool. But, you know, we talk about, we go down a half mill levy and the school district raises theirs 2 mill levies. I don't know if there's a way to highlight that more than what you've already done, but was that kind of what you were getting at, Greg?
Exactly. Yeah. And so I don't know if there's a way to organize it better, like total, you kind of have total up on the top, but then I would put R's down, you know, so that you drill down to, you can see just Bel Aire's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can make it to where if you click on that total levy, it could go to another screen and break all that out. So I can work on that.
Yeah, I just wasn't putting the annual with the monthly. It seems like those two need to go closer together. The
Gotcha.
Bel Aire portion is here.
Over it, yeah, with that. Okay. Yeah, I'll take that in consideration.
Those who are paying monthly payments are throwing that taxes into their monthly payment. So they want to know monthly,
Mhm.
but some of us actually just pay it once a year. And
Right.
we want to know the annual.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's based on the annual amount. It's just the breakdown over here just shows what it would cost on a monthly basis for our city services for your city portion.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree there. On the left, there was the monthly stuff, but on the right, there was the annual stuff. And I could see how that might get confusing. You could potentially add a toggle at the top that put everything in annual view or everything in monthly view.
I like it.
That way you are either looking at things annually or monthly, but never at the same time.
I could do that.
Yeah.
All right. Let me tinker with a little more and
But it's really cool.
get back.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Very, very handy.
Thank you. So as we go through that budgeting process, we always like to look at how we're going to budget and manage for any kind of financial risks. Taking into regards the housing market, economic recession, we saw how all that worked back in 2008, and the effects it had on that long term on every city around us. It also has effects on our bonds, since all of our GO bonds are backed by the city's taxing authority. If a recession does happen, our revenues are hindered. Therefore, we have to reallocate funds to keep making those debt payments because those aren't going to go down at all. We owe what we owe. Operational expenses, we're always looking at inflation, workforce shortages, time delays on receiving equipment, materials, stormwater pipe. I know that's a big one that takes forever to get. And we also take into account state legislation, just as the mayor mentioned a minute ago. So how do we protect against that? Keeping high reserves. Very proud of what your city manager has done over the past several years. He's done a phenomenal job at keeping everything going. I was extremely happy once I started looking at everything and couldn't have fell into a better situation. So thank you. Thanks, sir. Yeah, 30% of reserves in the fund balance policy. That is a great number to have. The last bond rating call I did, S&P valued that 30% number very highly. They're starting to look less at their individual criteria on what these numbers are supposed to look like, and they're more starting to rely on the story of your community, right? So as you're explaining that, you're explaining all the development happening, all the residential, all the IRBs that'll eventually come off, and the commercial development, everything like that. So they're starting to really lean more towards the story of everything you're doing rather than just those what kind of criteria, those benchmark numbers that, oh, you don't fall in here, so we're going to dock you 10 points, those kind of things. So also to help against that is just how we budget. If we're budgeting for needs, we're budgeting priorities as we identify them for each department, or utilizing other financing mechanisms with cash like pay as you go, save up a little here, a little there, pay for it as we go down the road. And also just making a plan and sticking to it. The streets plan is a great example of that. Make a plan, stick to it, continuously make progress towards that plan. That gives us a 5 to 10 year window to start planning today for those repairs and maintenance and new construction that we're going to need 5 and 10 years down the road. So how we adjust those and compare that to our debt situation, when those fall off and everything, all of that goes into play when we're setting out that CIP plan and really allocating those funds ahead of time to be used later on for those bigger projects to either buy down the debt when we issue it or just pay cash for those. So some of the budget pressures for the 25 budget is going to be salaries for one. Starting attendance salary has a huge effect on just recruitment and retention as a whole for our employees. It's always an issue. Things are constantly getting more expensive. With inflation, surrounding areas are always raising pay. So it's a constant battle back and forth of who's paying what we need to pay to retain our people. So right now we're kind of looking at maybe completing another compensation study in fiscal year 26. 25 is going to be more of a maintenance of what we have kind of thing. Moving forward, getting some old infrastructure replaced, looking at old facility upgrades, things like that. Then 26, once everyone else is done arguing and bickering about where they want to have their pay at, we'll come in and be able to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Competitive with those rates. Yeah. And also identifying inefficiencies, if that's with staffing, programs, operations. Do we have enough staff? Do we have too much staff? How do we do things? Or is there a better way to do them? Why are we doing things this way? Those are all good questions to ask all the time throughout the year. I always tell people budgeting is my favorite 12-month part of the year, just because we're always doing it. We're always asking those questions. We're always analyzing everything. And just touch on that a bit more in regards to inflation. If you look up these inflation calculators on Bureau of Labor Statistics. So $1 in 2020 is equal to $1.22 as of April of this year. That's when the latest data was available. If we compare that to our current merit-based system that we use for paying our employees and giving them their annual increases, we're behind about 8.5% in regard to inflation. Because right now our current process is you get a 2.5% step per year and then up to 2.5% or 2%, up to 2% bonus on top of that, based on your merit performance. So just something we're going to look at and pay attention to, and really hit hard when we do that compensation study, if it's approved by council to do that. Just one thing to keep in the back of our mind as we're moving forward.
When was the last time the council did a COLA increase in addition to the merit and bonus increase?
We'll have to defer on this one.
We did a 2% COLA in January of 2020, and that was kind of response of what we did for the officers in 19. We kind of, and I think that's the hardest thing we're coming on is, we made a giant leap forward for one department, and then we are trying to catch up on other departments. And it's come one of those times where we need to look at a salary study. It's been that golden 5 years, but frankly, we're doing an ERP update, and Barry's going to talk on that. The 2025 is not quite the year to do it. 2026 is. So when we present our budget, we might have some short fixes in there to get us to 2026. But I'm just fearful of losing someone, and we're going to try to maintain the best we can with our current matrix we have.
Ted, I know it's not the year for it, but with the compensation studies, is that something? I know at times you and Ty would kind of do your own research on what the pay was. Is this something where you'd like formally go through Wichita State or something like that in 2026 for the study?
So to me, it's becoming more of a forecasting where you have qualitative and quantitative data. And so Barry and I will look at different outsourced data sets that we can probably get provided. So there's a big business in compensation studies. And if you've ever been through one, you paid the full fare for one, you kind of feel a little like, man, shouldn't have paid for all that money. So Barry and I like to run things in that we're smart enough to figure most stuff out on our own, but we're also smart enough to know what we don't know. And that's the data sets that some of these company provides. So I imagine it'll be a mixture of us doing our thing plus what expertise is out there.
Thanks.
Is that about right, Barry? Is that
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
I know where Barry came from. They did a lot of work in salary studies, and I think that's kind of what they landed on. But he's probably has more expertise than I do because we kind of just did the one and done.
Yeah, so there's several different sources of data for that. You can go through the census data, the LKM, League of Kansas Municipalities. They put out a data set for that. And as long as you participate in those studies, you get free copies of those studies of all the surrounding areas that participate. Within those are all the jobs everyone has, the job descriptions, and the job duties of those each individual job titles. So the hard part about that is comparing job title to job title. It could be 180,000% different in two communities. So just comparing titles, kind of how they do, it's kind of hard to really get that number. So you really got to dig in there, get all the data out of it, and apply that to your current situation. So we'll definitely look at those. If there's more we would need, then yeah, we could possibly look at maybe a consultant of some sort. But I think Ted and I could do a pretty good job on getting where we need to get with that data. So over the past month or so, we've been meeting with all the departments and sitting down and kind of identifying needs and priorities of each department. Start out with the police department here. Main thing we're really looking at here is just staffing, equipment, and space when it comes to the police department. I can't say enough about the approval of KPNF. It's such a wonderful benefit for our officers to have. Considering every surrounding entity also provides KPNF. So thank you for approving that. That's a great benefit and it's a great retention tool. Our chief of police, Darrell Ladberry, asked around all the staff of their willingness to stay since that was approved. Every single response was, I ain't going anywhere now. So it's a huge benefit in regards to retention. So thank you once again. Another one of their pain points is that staffing. I'm sure you've seen the charts of how many officers we have per population, things like that. But what really makes that hard with those lower staffing numbers is the ability to take time off, go to trainings, take a vacation, spend some time with your family. You got to have a certain staffing ratio in order to provide that time off for your officers. So getting them up to speed personnel wise, that's kind of their main priority there. And then along with staffing, additional personnel comes cars, equipment, vests, lights, space, etc. All that follows that through.
And the hardest part, I told him I'd use this as an example. I said it in a few budget meetings, and I have Chief Atterbury there, Lieutenant Fox there, and first shift, we got about 3 officers. Someone got on a call. Lieutenant Fox had to leave the budget meeting. So as a city manager, I'm looking at how can we promote people? How can we include some of our higher level staff? That's what I'm more concerned about with our staffing levels in some areas is, if Chief Atterbury decides one day to, I'm left with, not a lot out there. So that's what I'm also looking at is, how much time does command have not patrolling? And I asked them for that type of data that we'll probably share with you next in July. A lot of those little instances where, Chief Atterbury, you see him a lot. He's a career police officer, loves patrolling, but we don't need all the top command out patrolling when there's other stuff to do inside the office. So Barry and I really pushed them to get us some more of that data set of how many hours do you spend out on patrol versus in the office, those types of decisions to help inform you guys of what we are seeing on a day-in-day basis.
Next up was the rec department. I can't say enough about our rec department. They do such a great job managing everything, all the programs they do. They've had over 608 participants in rec sports just this past month, with baseball, softball, t-ball, blastball, happy feet soccer, all those things. Over 300 participants in pickleball just last month alone. Let's see what's there. Over 540 drop-ins for the rec, which totals out to about just over 1,100 participants utilizing our rec services just last month. They do such a great job managing everything. Can't say enough about them. Some of the things that they brought up in their meeting was to stay focused on that rec master plan. It was completed with the parks master plan, I believe, last September. One thing they're really looking at is just facility upgrades, indoor and outdoor, mainly the ball fields, that particular part of the plan in the bottom right there in that picture. The ball fields, getting the sidewalks done to increase that accessibility for all the parents and everything, and all the patrons and all the visitors. I'm still a little tired. I was up till 11 o'clock last night playing softball out in El Dorado. My wife coaches a team here in Bel Aire. I coach the team, my daughter's team in El Dorado. We have two other kiddos. One plays softball and then one plays machine pitch. So these past 2 months have been quite busy for the Smith household. I think we had 8 games last week total. So, but some of the main drivers is just these facilities. They're just old, kind of antiquated a little bit. There's a bench that's the dugout on field 2, I believe. It's just that bench up there in the middle. The fencing out there, the net fences, just the facilities as a whole just needs a facelift and an upgrade. So that's kind of what their focus was, along with some equipment for inside the rec facility, weightlifting equipment, treadmills, things like that, to get things kind of back up to shape where they need to be. Brian did share a fun fact with me that those fields were constructed back in 1999 with a $19,000 grant from Kansas Parks and Wildlife. And they did all the work themselves with that grant money and got those fields ready. So I was pretty amazed by that. Yeah, just need some major upgrades out there. And there's so many people to show up at those games. You know, you got 108 players. Imagine 3 to 4 to 5 additional attendees based on family and friends. I mean, you could have anywhere from 150, 200 people at a ball field every time we have a game. But the current setup as well also puts some constraints on when we can actually play, because we can only host games. The latest game we can host is 6:30, just because we don't have any lights out there to play in the evening. So that's another thing we look at when we're starting to look at these upgrades and starting to put those in that CIP plan and when we want to accomplish those goals. So just something to think about as we move forward. Public Works, this department, along with Ann's help and Marty's, pretty straightforward. Some more focus on infrastructure replacement, sewer relinings, hydrants, lift station repairs, upgrades, some grinder pumps, things like that. Things we'll put out into a all-inclusive plan moving forward on a regular replacement schedule. Build in some annual maintenance budget into our operational funds, water and sewer, to kind of keep those on a constant maintained status rather than wait until something breaks and be reactive. We want to be proactive when it comes to all that. So some challenges and opportunities. Challenges, right now, some personnel transition. We've had a lot of transition here recently with our previous city manager, other employees, some other employees that are about to retire, a lot of institutional knowledge going out the door. So I think what Ted's focused on a lot is getting the right people in the place they need to be to make sure that transition is smooth and successful, and we don't miss a beat when it comes to providing those services. But one big opportunity is that ERP system upgrade that we're doing now. Picked a great software to go with. ERP Pro 10 is a in-house built software through Tyler Tech. It's not something they purchased and then make fit to what they currently do. It's 100% custom. They built that from the ground up inside their own business. So it's very customizable. It works well with everything. They have the code. They can get in there, make adjustments to make sure we're as efficient as possible when it comes to providing those services. Along with that comes some great questions. What, how, and why? What are we currently doing? How are we doing it? Why are we doing it this way? If the answer is great, then great. But it's always good to ask those questions just to make sure we're doing things as efficiently as possible. And now's the best time to do that. Every part of this system incorporates, city code, utilities, planning and zoning requirements. Everything like that is going to come into play as we're building out the software and getting it to where it needs to be for us to move forward. So a quick touch on debt here. For next year, we had a total of 6.4 million in principal and interest payments. Property taxes fund about 2.2 of that, utilities about 1.6, special assessments about 2.5. And this number here, I think, is a great opportunity to look for as we move down the road. So 20.134 mils of our mill levy goes to debt service. About 11 of those straight land debt. And as that starts to fall off in 2030 and 2031 through 2034, those will be major opportunities to really take a look at that mill levy and see what we can do with that. But we have to do that responsibly to make sure we're always going to be maintaining enough revenues to keep providing services for all personnel and all that. But there is a kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, when it comes to debt. And those are the years right there we're looking at. So when we start planning now, because that's only 10 years away, 2034. So when we start integrating those, that debt fall off in our CIP plans, street plans, everything like that, that's when we really hit the ground running with those plans and just constantly move forward. We're always going to have funding available to make those happen. So I like debt a lot. Debt and CIP, those are my two favorite things to do. So I got another interactive tool to show you here. So this one shows all of our, it's a picture of our debt as a city as a whole. So this first one here is our total outstanding debt. We're about 45.8 million now. Here's how that declines over time, all the way through expiration of every bond issuance that we currently have right now, every loan we have, everything like that. So that's the amortization schedule essentially of our overall city debt. This middle section here, it's kind of painstaking, but I went through every issuance we had and identified every project within that issuance. So as you go through here and scroll through the bond issues, you can see the 2015 EGO bond was Rock Spring Phase 2 and Commerce Park improvements. So help me understand better what each of those issuances were for, the timing of them, what they completed, everything like that. And down here at the bottom is just our annual principal and interest payments. This makes budgeting extremely easy. So I just look here and throw those numbers in the budget and we're good to go. Down here, and then it breaks it out to our total interest and principal payments for that year. But the good thing about, or the nice thing about this one is you can come up here and every one of these issuances have a funding source attached to them. So when we're looking at general fund and our PVC bonds, we can just click PVC and ad valorem, which is the property taxes. And then here's all of our debt that is strictly supported by property tax. It narrows everything out. So you can get a quick snapshot of everything we have that's reliant upon our mill levy. It also filters out all the issuances that we rely on the ad valorem and then our principal and interest payments down here. So you can go through here and look at just sewer, just water, all of our special assessment debt, what those projects are. You can click on a funding itself and see what we owe on that funding just by clicking on that specific project. So just another tool I like to use. I'm a very visual person, like I said, just helps me understand our overall picture better.
On your forward-looking debt, have you factored in Woodlawn being bonded?
Not yet. All the tip notes that are still outstanding, once those start rolling into bonds, probably a year ahead of time, they'll be
I'm
added
just
on
saying,
there.
I don't think we're going to see a nice downward curve. We're going to see it.
Woodlawn, you say Woodlawn?
Yes.
Yeah, Woodlawn's already, it was bonded last year.
Okay.
So it was in the 2023 A.
Yeah, that one is in there.
The problem with Woodlawn, if you remember, it's basically three different issuances. So it's the design was issued and then the when we went out to bid, and then this is the follow-up. So
So as we just issue more, I'll add it to this. And it'll be on there for us to look at.
To be clear on Woodlawn, there could be some residual stuff out there, but primarily it's 95% bonded already.
and we'll have 53rd coming up, right?
Yeah, 53rd will be in the 2024, basically temp note, and then we'll roll to bond when we usually 3 years, but we can pick and choose our interest rate.
Yeah, and when we do bond those, that curve should still hold true when we do that, based upon how we amortize that debt. Rating agencies like to see at least 60% of that paid back within the first 10 years. So that's what helps create that curve, that downward curve.
I'm just thinking we may see a little bit of a bump instead of a nice, perfect curve.
Yeah, it might temporarily, but it'll eventually all smooth out to that same curve. It'll just extend longer and longer and longer over time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Until we start utilizing that extra mill levy as cash to buy those down, drop that, pay the cash, drop a little more, pay cash, drop a little more, pay cash, to where that eventually goes away on the ad valorem side. That'd be like the ultimate goal. And we'll get there. So I just wanted to review with you the budget goals, get some feedback on that. Kind of similar to last year's adopt a level mill levy, continue to fund the street improvements, provide quality services, financial stability, and maintain a high quality of life. Pretty much standard anywhere you go when it comes to budgeting standpoint, but great pillars to work for or work with. So that kind of does it for the presentation. Just a quick wrap up. Any feedback on the information provided? Was that good? This is my first time doing this for City of Bel Aire. So was that good information? Do you need more? What do you like to see? Those kind of things that I can incorporate that into our future discussions.
Well, I think this is a very good presentation. I like the drop downs. I like the visual part of it as well.
Awesome.
A couple of things I think we'd like to continue doing, and of course it's up to the city council as well, but I think we want to continue to target reducing the mill levy, a small amount, one point maybe. We're at 43 now, maybe try to target 42. I know it's not a perfect world because in November they tell you what it really is, right? So anyway, and it's very important to me, and I think it's important to all the city council members that we take care of our people, just take care of our employees. Regardless whether you do a salary study or not, I do not want our employees to be hurting because we overlooked something. Okay.
Understood.
I'm going to caution that with the counterbalance. I work for a machine shop here in town that the proprietor sold the company. He took very good care of employees. The new owner couldn't afford that. And it caused a very depleted morale of the organization. So I don't want us to get to the point that we're paying so well that there's no way an employee could go someplace else. But I do want to retain our employees and take care of them. Okay.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, employees are always number one. Without them would be nothing, right?
Yeah.
Got to take care of them, make sure they're well informed, all the tools they need to get the job done, essentially. So, yeah, they're the foundation of our city government.
Yeah, I'd like to see a mill levy decrease. I fought for that every year, but I don't see how we can commit to anything until the state passes its law, whatever, on what it's going to do with what taxes it's going to collect and what it's going to exempt. So I don't know how we fiddle with that and get a budget done until they've passed their bill. Because, if they exempt the first 100,000, we may have to raise our mill levy to make up the difference. And everybody will hate us for doing that. But if the state forces that hand, that may be where we get.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the dollars won't change significantly. It will be just how you play with the mill levy versus the assessed value and to get the same dollars.
But if we have to go from a 40 mill levy to a 60 mill levy to keep the same dollars, everybody's going to see that 50% increase in the mill levy, and they're going to be upset.
Oh yeah, I get that.
Even if it is the same dollars.
Right.
Yeah, that was the focus of that revenue neutral rate, right? We focus on the dollars now rather than the mill levy. So that becomes the presentation of this is what we generated last year. Yeah, we're having to add 10 mills or whatever. If that were the case, hopefully it never happens. But that dollar amount would be the same. there wouldn't be any additional financial effect. It'd be the same.
Yeah, I think from a city, most taxing authorities position, the mill levy is just a shuffle. It's not or the $100,000 exemption is just a shuffle. It's not a reduction in taxes. It might be from the state itself, from their portion, but their portion is what? 1% of the tax? Yeah. It's not very much of the whole, of the total.
I think
So,
they're kind of pulling that from how the school districts levy, because there's, I think it's the
Yeah.
first $20,000 on every property is exempt from the general fund levy on school districts.
Yeah.
So it just bumps your levy up higher to get the same dollar
And so if
amount.
that's the game that you have to play, to your point, then really the strategy isn't like what is the mill levy? The strategy then is how does the city of Bel Aire spend a little bit less than the amount that is projected to be increased and focus on the dollar amount and what the projected increase should be, and then work that through the budgeting process.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked that we're only expecting, if we hold everything the same, we'd only be expecting another 500,000 in income with all the growth we've had. I expected more than that, but
Yeah.
so I don't know. We may have to take the whole 500,000 so we can pay for some other things. I hate to say that, but that may be the truth of it.
A 1 mil reduction would put that target at like 400,000. Is that?
The mill value is going to be 112,000. So it'd be about 166 or 366,000 would be our increase. 165
Yeah,
or
about what you
365.
said.
right, something like that.
Yeah.
You're close.
Yeah. Quick math. Sorry.
Yeah.
A little tired.
Okay.
But we're delaying road improvements because we're tight on money. So
But I think we are hitting everything in the 5-year plan, right?
we're doing a lot better than we were
Sure.
doing 5 or 6 years ago. Yes.
There will always be a list of road
And
improvements.
yes, exactly.
That's
We will
why
never
what
run
Barry
out of
called out of
projects
like
to do.
develop a plan and stick to the plan is key there.
Right. If we can show progress, we're doing good.
And I think that's, and we've been here a long time, and we had someone calculate the deferred maintenance on streets. What was that, 5 years ago? It was around 12.5 or 13 million, and who knows what it is.
I remember
But
that.
it just really, the long-term effects of 2007, 2008 are still being felt through our budget. And that right now it's showing its face in some of our facilities. And if we choose to not at least plan and invest for those types of improvements, we're going to be left with exactly what we have now. If not, we're actually the bench and at the rec center is going to be sink even lower. Then you just have to sit on the ground, I think, Barry. But and again, a bit that's a over exaggeration, but that's kind of what I'm seeing is a lot of our needs are expensive right now, and that's improved facilities, those types of things, and we're doing things to address it. It's just that's what we're starting to struggle with. It's not necessarily the small $100,000 projects; it's the $1 million, and that's what why I brought Barry on here, and why I think we're going to become more of a planning city and less of a reactive city, and that's what I'm trying to move the ship towards, so that we can say if we can do a half a mil lower, maybe not a mil, because that puts into jeopardy our repair of our upgraded rec facility or our upgraded public works facility. So we want to be able to bring that information to you. And sadly enough, the first step is getting an ERP system that can spit out a lot of good data for us to analyze. And all that stuff you saw Barry do is just him on a Excel spreadsheet. A lot of times, the way we're setting up our new system, the way that Barry's setting up our new system is it's a click away versus 5 hours of Barry's work. So those are the type of investments we made last year, and paying a quality staff to analyze those numbers is only going to help the city into the future. So that's kind of where I'm looking at.
Okay. And do we also have anything forward looking on IRBs when they fall off, so we can see it, that the tax will go up because of the commercial?
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that at our next workshop. That's my next task to tackle.
Okay.
It's a lot of T's.
I'm ahead of you. I'm sorry.
Yep. No, this is kind of an
So
overview. I want to get that interaction, that feedback from the council to see when I'm looking at all that information, how I can present that to you in a way that you want to see, essentially, the information you want to see.
And I'm not a fan of new taxes, but I have heard some things about sales tax and sales tax from internet sales and how that's mushroomed into a significant revenue issue. I'd like to see some analysis of that. I'm not saying we should do that, but I think we should at least know what that means to us if we would do something like that, just
Yeah.
so that we could have that discussion.
Mhm.
Like I said, I'm not a fan of it, but I think it would behoove us to at least take a look at it, because that's a change from what was going on 2 or 3 years ago. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
and to that, there have been some people that expressed that they would rather we had sales tax than a property tax increase. And I
Yeah.
don't think we have enough base yet to really make a significant number if we levied a local sales tax.
It might be surprising, honestly. We did that in my previous community. Our estimate was 50% what was actually collected when it came to that, which for a huge change in the plan. Sorry.
Yeah. So the
Change in
difference
plan,
is
so.
the difference is that you now collect the sales tax off of internet sales from a few years ago. That wasn't the case. You were only getting it based upon actual businesses physically located in the city.
Sales tax and the use tax part of that's huge too.
Yeah.
Because they're holding it for its final delivery within our city limits. Yeah.
Maybe it's time to look seriously at doing that.
Yeah. I can reach out and get an estimate. Sure.
Yeah, I just like to have some sort of a presentation on it to see what does this look like. I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm not saying we're not. I just like to have a look at it. Okay.
Awesome. Anything else?
I agree with Mayor as far as the mill. I think great presentation, Barry. It's really nice to see the debt portion highlighted and how we can continue to march the mill down in a strategic, planned way. I really liked all the tools that you showed. I think those are all great. I think citizens will appreciate having the ability to see that
Mhm.
transparency with the tax bill, because
Yep.
every year it's just the same thing. You know, people
Mhm.
trying to understand what the mill means and
Yep.
what portion they're going to pay. And when increases happen, that's obviously when it gets really contentious. But thank you for putting effort into this first budget workshop.
No problem. That's what I love to do.
When do we get, when do we find out about the state plan? The states.
Well, maybe next week. We don't know, but they're going to reconvene on the 18th. Is this when the governor called them back to session? How long they take? It might be a day. It might be a week. I don't know. It's really up to the legislature what they do. So
We should know by next month's
hopefully
presentation.
we would know by next time.
We have
Not because they would pass a bill and the governor would sign it. Hopefully, and then we'll know. If they pass a bill, the governor vetoes, then who knows what's going to happen there. But and she has vetoes to 4 or 5 different tax cut plans. So I don't know what that means.
Just
Okay.
like the tax lid and the revenue neutral rate, when those were first introduced, we had a 2-year buffer window to prepare for that. So if they alter anything to do with the property tax and mill levies, they usually give us ample time to start making those adjustments. So we are planning for the year ahead with the revenues from year behind, right? So they take
So
that
on
into
that
account.
note, don't we have to start paying for that next year? The revenue neutral rate publications and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's going to cost us about $800.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Sedgwick County, they outsourced it and they got it real cheap. I
Okay.
think their mail's from like Utah or something.
Okay. I knew it was
Yeah.
kind of silly that we were having to spend extra money
Yeah,
to go do
charge us
that,
$800, yeah.
and that's a unfunded mandate of the state. I get it. That's not, but I didn't know how much money it was. So,
Yeah,
okay.
not nearly as much as they were expecting at first.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of good news.
yeah, the county had to invest in their software because their software couldn't do it at first. So they had to make their upgrades internally, and then that made it a lot cheaper because they were able to report it instantaneously within their own system. So that was the big cost driver for them up front.
Okay. So we're basically going to have the county do it and just pay them for it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or concerns on budget?
Yeah, I was just going to throw in a comment that I liked the 10-year plan, and because residents will say $1.65 a month. I spent more than that on coffee today. That's not impressive. Stop writing that down on your palm card. But this is a long-term
Mhm.
plan. And the other thing I was going to comment on is, it's not just residential, it's on the commercial side too, and they pay a much higher rate. So it's from an attractiveness as we keep keep working down. So I really, yeah, just echoing the visuals. They were very helpful. So thanks.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any other issues we need to discuss this evening? Well, yes, ma'am.
I didn't know our neighbor Sylvia Ford was wanting to come tonight, but they had some family.
Could you come to the podium? I can't, so that it's picked up on the recording. And please state your name and address.
Melanie Pinner.
Okay.
My husband Ron, we live at 4100 North Baton
Thank you.
here in Bel Aire, and didn't want to interrupt. So it's a workshop. It's not council meeting, but Sylvia
Right.
says, so can you go? Can you still go? And I said, yes. I know none of us have been here for a while from Aurora Park, and we're still concerned about our streets. And I don't have a whole lot to say other than there are programs and grants. And I have an article that I wanted to share with you all, but I think I have 8 copies and there's 9 or 10. So I don't know if those that are right here in the office, if you could make a copy for the other one, I'd appreciate that. And for you new members, we've lived here come July 1st, it will be 33 years. And we've just seen a decline in our gravel dirt roads over the years. And we're still concerned. So that's really it. If you have any questions, that's fine too. But this article is from Montezuma Press, Montezuma, Kansas, west of Dodge City, which I grew up in southwest Kansas. But our family knows how we are not pleased with our streets, because some of them that live right here in Wichita, every time I go to your house, I have to go get my car washed afterwards. Well, sorry, but you know, those that come from southwest Kansas that are in the farming community, they're used to it. So anyway,
Okay.
that's
Very
just
good.
all I
Thank
have.
you.
So I don't know how many of you are right here in the office. And it's just food for thought about some grants or things. And of course, when I read that, I thought maybe we need to share it. And I think Sylvia has a copy of this. Okay, so anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
As I
It was-
said, well, you can sneak in at the end. I don't know who's here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. So that's all I have.
Okay. So, and I can't give you all the details about where we are on
Yes.
all that, but I do know that you've not been forgotten about. We are looking at, and I think we approved. Did we approve doing the drainage for Aurora Park? I think we did. So that has been approved. I don't know the exact plan, but I think there's a plan to come right back behind that with the rock. But I don't quote me on that because I don't know. Okay.
And that is fine. I do know some of our residents have mentioned that they didn't know when that survey or whatever it was that was out, that the city was expecting either a yes or a no. They just said, well, I didn't know what was up, so I didn't say no or I didn't say yes. And I said, well, it would have been helpful for the rest of us that said, yes, we want pavement, than for those that were just teeter-tottering and not saying yes or
Yeah.
no. So,
If you have enough people that say yes, you can start a new petition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah.
That's certainly true. So,
Well-
yeah.
we're still working on some of them, I know.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And we can do it a block at a time if that's what we need to. We don't have to have all of Aurora Park.
That
You
piece
probably
still,
will be-
that doesn't, yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
was gonna
it
say
costs a lot
that's-
more,
yeah.
but we can do it.
Yeah, that's not the best, but yeah.
Okay.
Mayor Benaj, if you want an update on the gravel road as far as the budget goes. So we had the gravel road task force recommended a stretch be done with, and Ann might know more of the specifics, but we did that stretch and then we are evaluating it for, I think, trying to get close to a year as possible so we know how it does in all seasons. there's $10,000 allocated in the street fund for gravel roads. Once we are comfortable with the recommendation of the gravel roads task force and we see it holding up, we'll lay $10,000 worth, and then go the next year, we'll lay $10,000 worth. That's kind of the process, is how we're doing it with the budget and the street maintenance plan for the gravel roads. So really what we did is had the gravel road task force come back with their recommendations, did it. We're testing it right now. Hopefully at the end of the year, we'll lay the budgeted amount of the new gravel if it's suffice. And then eventually, I'm trying to think, and it might take 3 to 5 years to get all of Aurora Park done if that new gravel treatment is what is working. But that's the latest that I have with talking with Marty and Ann.
Well, I do know what is on Harding Street is definitely a down for us. I would say there is maybe one day out of the month, probably not even one day out of the month, we will drive down Harding to 37th versus going 40th, Oliver, and around. It has helped the dust, but it has not taken care of dust. And it is, but like that. I mean, the speed limit is 30, which nobody really drives 30 either. But it is rough. You could probably ask the Bel Aire police. They drive by every now and then, but it's just, it is very rough. You know, first off, it was the dust. Well, now with this part here to me is not good.
I
So
think it's a trade-off of
It's
the
a-
different
it's a
gravels you
trade-off,
use,
yeah.
and use one is going to be more
Yeah.
dusty, use another is going to be more rough. Yeah, I don't think there's a solution to that as long as it's a gravel road.
The only solution is to not have it be a gravel road.
That's right. That's the only solution.
Yeah, so I know, you know, even since they've had that on Harding, I've said, well, maybe we just do the more campaigning, because some of them said, yeah, but that's still not. And I'm going, well,
Yeah.
vote the other way then. So,
All right.
okay,
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
And I imagine we'll probably get the recommendation from the gravel road task force of what, if it did hold up, before we spend more money on that same
I think
style.
you better.
And that's what I'm.
They're the ones that
planning
got to
on.
live with
Let's-
it.
Let's wait till midsummer, which is always a fun part, and then we'll reconvene the gravel road task force and then allocate those funds the way the recommendation and according to the council.
Okay. Very good. All right.
But we were all under the impression there was going to be maybe 2 or 3 different types. And maybe they just didn't ever come up with any other thing.
That's all they came up with,
Yeah,
to my
just
knowledge.
that one.
Yeah.
So-
They just came up with the one. Yeah.
Because some people are saying they didn't try anything else. Well, I know we attended 2 or 3 of the meetings that they had and talking with those on the committee. And like I said, there's just really not a whole lot to choose from. I mean,
Mhm.
other than I think they talked about a sealant, but that's not going to work on that. Know that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so-
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other things we need to discuss workshop? Okay. Well, if not, I will dismiss everyone and we'll see everybody next Tuesday.